And we are recording. Welcome to Connections Revealed, All Souls 2020, with your event organizer with the mostest, Hazel Archer-Ginsberg, with inspirations by Lelan Harris, Eurythmy by Mary Rood, Speech Formation by Jeffrey Norris, and I'm your Zoom host, Ann Nicholson. So I believe that the first person that is going to be presenting is Lelan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lelan Harris. I'm in Reno, Nevada. I would like to invite you in joining me in an opening that I will speak on our behalf. Dedicate this gathering to the highest awakening and alignment with spirit of each person present, whether live in this moment of space and time or joining with us in the future. On behalf of each person, I express our desire, motive, wish, and intention to activate and consciously align ourselves with our guardian angels, with the archangel of this gathering, with the archangel Michael, with Christ and Anthroposophia, and with divine consciousness. I represent on behalf of each person our resolve to unite and partner with our higher selves, our I am selves, and all the helpers, guides, angels, and others of 100% light and love who, with us, are fully committed to the highest and best destiny of humanity as guided by Christ, the I am of humanity. All beings who are not aligned with Christ, who are not committed to the highest and best destiny of humanity, who are not beings of 100% light and love, must leave us now with our gratitude for your service and present yourselves to Christ for your reward and reassignment. We now turn our attention into this present moment towards each other with great deal of hope and anticipation with what will arise in us and through us for the highest good and the best destiny of all. So be it.
And so it is. Yes, thank you. Do you all feel lighter a little bit there? Yeah, because we're co-creating. We're joining our intentions together for this gathering today, which is meant to redeem the ethers with love and light and the power of the living word. So Lelan has already got that word vibration happening. So this idea of connections revealed is really meant to continue to bring us into right relationship, a moral partnership, to help really balance our karma and to enlighten the shadow. And so by embracing with gratitude all the things that we might initially call obstacles, which in reality are really gifts, it gives us an opportunity for change and growth. So here we are at this time of All Souls. Traditionally a time in many cultures to honor our beloved dead. And it's just always interesting to me that we always have our general elections at this time of year. It really makes you think. And so I hope that some of the leading thoughts that we bring today will help to put a little perspective on that reality that we're living in right now. So thinking about these kinds of things and this time of year and the fact that that it is the time to honor the dead, that we've just had these interesting elections, and really, how does this focus our lens of perspective, as we continue to ride this, Corona coaster? How do we bring a healing balm to those that have had to cross the threshold alone at this time? For me, this is the reality that really hurts the most. That because we know that this transition at the portal of death is very much like the portal of birth, and it should be a sacred space, a time of initiation for the human being. But the lockdown has robbed many of the dignity of a graceful death, surrounded by family and friends to sit in vigil while the soul makes that transition. So, it makes me think, have we forgotten that death is part of life? Are we so afraid of death that we've forgotten how to live? This Corona crisis is a battle for the crown. It's the jewel in the crown of creation, which is us. That's what the book of Genesis says. It's the human being, the crown, the jewel in the crown of creation. And we could do a whole webinar about this topic. It's so fascinating, but I wanted to bring in this picture of the Kabbalistic tree of life. The very top is Kether, the crown. So we must not relinquish our birthright. So we're not only experiencing a social, political, economic, or global health crisis, it's the essence of humanity that is being fought for. So how can we accept and work into our karma with tolerance, hope, trust, and love at this turning point in time? Can we maintain and strengthen our ability to create our destiny in freedom? I don't know about you, but I've experienced how karma can take on the face of illness as a means to engage our will to create change. And I told this story during the Sacred Gateway that, 4 years ago, at the time of the last presidential election, I let my fears and my anxiety really take hold, and I developed a bad case of viral pneumonia. Maybe it's a premonition of what's going on now, but it laid me up for almost 9 months. And but it led me to begin an intense spiritual scientific study on the connection between karma, illness, and in particular viruses. So spiritual science shows that continually flowing into the physical cause of illness are forces that come through the human being on both sides of the threshold. So Steiner tells us, it is urgently necessary for humankind to become conscious of the fact that the so-called dead and the spiritual world are working into the actual details of physical existence. Something to think about. And so it is that today, we're faced with an illness which under a microscope appears like the sun's corona. Wow. So what rings true for me is the ever-present picture of the earth becoming a sun, and the etheric body of Mother Earth, shrouded in this web of satellites. That's on the macro level, right? But this coronavirus is on this micro level. So we have these two levels of sort of a push-pull kind of thing happening now. And how can we find equanimity? So for me, I really just tried to start to visualize this representative of humanity, which we all must strive to become, to hold the balance and foster the light divine. So during this presentation, we're going to bring this into practice. It's really all about checks and balances, which I think has, we've gotten really far away from that. And it's easy to look around and see that our ecosystems and, a lot, it's just all out of balance. And that's the kind of thing that fosters illness. We share the etheric realm with the plant world. And our astral body is affected by the imbalance in the animal kingdom, which we also share this astral world with the so-called dead. So Steiner, this Steiner quote that I'm going to give you right now, actually, Joff is going to read it for us, might provide a little clue. And he, Steiner has a lot to say about, in particular, about the animal kingdom, in particular about bats, which some say may be linked to this illness. Joffrey?
The bat contributes an unhealthy astrality consisting of unconscious fear-laden ideas, feelings, and speculations, which feed beings who oppose the aims of the progressive hierarchies for the healthy evolution of human beings. This bat residue is the most craved for nutriment of what I have described as the dragon. But this bat residue must first be breathed into the human being. The dragon finds his surest foothold in human nature when man allows his unconscious instincts to be imbued with these emanations of the bats. There they seethe, and the dragon feeds on them and grows.
So this gives us a societal picture in a way, doesn't it? So besides building up our immunity through biodynamic foods, which also heals the earth, doing eurythmy, which we will do in a little while with Mary, creating meditation time for ourselves, we are asked to consciously purify our astral body. We have to purify it, especially of images of fear placed there by the dragon. And this also benefits the dead, since they share in this astral realm. Really, the only way to actually stop the spread of an illness is to stop it from mutating and returning again and again. And this is through a natural immunity. Now, of course, those that are frail must be protected. But by facing the challenge to our immune system, we face our karma. And this strengthens us. Our immunity, it's not just something that's passed down from heredity, right, from our ancestors. It works in from the future. It is a will activity. It works by manifesting an illness, which gives us an opportunity to reform and renew our relationship to the ancestors, to the earth, and to our future evolution. So Steiner says, illness seeks to create our body anew from out of sun forces arising in the present, which are calling from the future. So could it be that the name corona is a clue to its cure? An admonition for us to reconnect to the sun forces of the etheric Christ, waiting to be employed in these current evolving conditions. An invitation to rise to a higher stage of initiation for humanity, a true coronation. Perhaps this world illness is part of a process, a learning curve, a retuning for humanity. Yeah, I saw this statement a while ago by a Hopi elder who said, this moment humanity's going through can be seen as a portal or as an abyss. The decision to fall into a hole or to go through the portal is up to you. It's up to us. So Steiner warns that falling asleep with fear and hate or horror and materialistic mindsets provides a breeding ground for viruses in individuals and in the subconsciousness of society as a whole. It is the fear in our astral bodies that is contagious. So how are we doing out there? Is this making sense? Am I hitting home? Am I talking truth? Can you relate? Yeah, you with me? Don't let the bats scare you. It's okay. Yeah. So we're going to take it a little further. And we're going to think about what Steiner says regarding human beings that haven't developed a moral conscience. Those that don't have a connection with the spiritual world. So Steiner tells us that in the life between death and rebirth, they will, quote, become the slave, the servant of beings who have to bring illness and early death into the world in their next life. Okay, I know, that's intense. But let's look deeper into this. Spiritual science reveals that after death, these people, that are bound in their sense world intellect, that they become stuck in the lower realms just outside of the physical world. The Buddhists know about this. They call them hungry ghosts. And Steiner also indicates that what he calls the dark brotherhoods know this and actually use these discarnate human souls as weapons in their goal of disrupting true human evolution toward love and freedom. Yeah, it's hard to say, right? But yeah, they're smart. They're very, very clever, very, very clever. They know these things and they're using it to their advantage. So Steiner asks, why? Why have these souls condemned themselves to such service? Because, he says, during their lives on earth, they indulged in a love of ease and comfort. Steiner tells us that if we consider how widespread love of ease has become, we will find that Ahriman has a considerable number of recruits. Right? And yet, dear friends, through spiritual science, we see that this evil has a purpose to help us in our striving. These ideas can, they're disconcerting. I get it. But it really points up our responsibility to counteract these forces by working with the dead, creating protective thoughts and ceremonies, like Leland's little introduction. It's as simple as that. These can help to release them through our healing intentions. And this work has the added benefit of preparing us to take up the task of redeeming evil. And so that's where I'm going to call Leland back in again with this verse.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. This is from Rudolf Steiner's lecture on pastoral medicine entitled Broken Vessels, the Spiritual Structure of Human Frailty. At the end of that lecture, he gives us this verse. And this is a little bit unusual in that he very often, when Rudolf Steiner gives us a verse, he indicates that the verses are not intended for us to overly conceptualize or try to understand. But in this case, this verse is given to us, Steiner says, as an aid. So both as a verse that is efficacious in working with it meditatively as typical, but also as a verse to work with to help us understand where humanity needs to go in the directions that Hazel has been indicating. So here's the verse. I will follow the path that dissolves the elements into activity and leads me down to the Father, who sends illness to work out karma, and leads me up to the Spirit, who guides the erring soul toward freedom. The Christ leads downward and upward, creating spirit man in earth humanity in harmonious union. Okay, just a moment, I'm slipping over to be able to screen share with you here. And here we go. So this is an illustration from that lecture that Rudolf Steiner gave that's connected to the verse that Hazel selected for us to pay attention to here. And the verse, I'm going to show you the verse again in just a moment, but that verse mentions that Christ points upward and points downward. Upward, works upward in humanity to the Spirit, works downward in humanity to the Father. Let's take a look at that verse again. I will follow the path that dissolves the elements into activity, leading me down to the Father, who sends illness to work out karma and leads me up to the Spirit, who guides the erring soul toward freedom. The Christ leads downward and upward, creating spirit man in earth humanity in harmonious union. Now, I'm going to do just a little bit of teaching, and then I'm going to give you something that's going to be a very powerful takeaway, or at least it is for me. So I want to offer it to you. When we think often of the Father, we normally think of the Father principle as above and the Mother principle below. But Steiner here is talking about the Father below. So what is he referring to? There is another verse that Rudolf Steiner gives that Robert Powell has shared with us in one of his books. And it is the Mother Maya verse. And I just want to share this. It's the verse here in the middle. We won't read the other words around it. If you seek me with true desire for knowledge, says the Mother, I shall be with you. I am the seed and the source of your visible world. I am the ocean of light in which your soul lives. I am the ruler of space. I am the creator of cycles of time, fire, air, light, water, and earth obey me. Feel me as the spiritual origin of all matter. And as I have no consort on earth, call me Maya. Maya is the illusion of incarnation. There's a reality to our incarnation in material world, and there's an illusion. And our Mother is saying, until I have a consort on earth, call me illusion. Our Mother is waiting for her consort. So in the Four Seasons and Archangels, Rudolf Steiner presents this. How do we begin to put this together? Human beings live in the mysteries to which the Spirit Father points upward and the mysteries to which the Earth Mother points downward. These mysteries are united by the fact that the Christ, through the working together of the Spirit Father and the Earth Mother, stands directly before the human soul as the sustaining cosmic spirit. Remember that illustration that I showed above with Christ in the middle? That's associated with the verse that Hazel selected for us. This actually begins to make sense. If you want to get some traction on this, this is very powerful esoteric concepts that we're bringing forth, but we can bring them down to practical daily reality in a way that will transform our lives and are working with spirit, the so-called dead, etc. And it begins with this illustration that Rudolf Steiner gives us with regard to the Lord's Prayer. And I don't have time to explain it, but hopefully you will recognize here the Father above, the Mother below, and the 7 petitions of the Lord's Spirit. And the question is back to, how is the Father above? What is all this about the Father coming down and the Mother pointing downward and the Mother pointing upward? And this dissolution of elements by which we bring healing to our illnesses, which are gifts from the Father, in order to transcend up to the Spirit. That's the verse. That's what we're all striving to do. And a clue comes in what Rudolf Steiner teaches us about the Lord's Prayer. And that if we have the physical, etheric, astral, and ego bodies below in the blue square, and our higher selves, spirit, self, life, spirit, spirit, human above in the triangle, how do these unite? And a graphic image is like this, the small square on the left. That what happens is the evil connected with the petition with regard to evil is connected to the petition regarding the kingdom, the petition regarding temptation as it's connected to the petition regarding hallowing, and the will comes down with the Father and joins at the level of physical and etheric with the Mother. And now the Mother has her consort and is no longer needs to be named Maya. But we as humans, when we do this work that is being referred to in all these verses, begin to perceive through the veils the reality. So there's this process, and what we end up with actually is the Lord's Prayer being the key to that verse. Specifically with regard to the petitions related to the Spirit to move upward, the petitions hallowing the name, and in order for union with the spiritual world, and for health and healing of our illnesses and our karma, it's with regard to the petition to the Father to do the will of the Father. Now, there is much more that can be explained about this and can make sense of this, which I have articulated in my Lord's Prayer class, which is available online. All I'm saying is that if this somehow grabs your imagination, there is more information available that I can share with you. But here's what I would like to do then. If we go back to the, sorry, I didn't do this very efficiently. If we go back to the original verse, I will follow the path that dissolves the elements into activity and leads me down to the Father, from the Father above now coming down and uniting with the Mother, who sends illness to work out karma and leads me up to the Spirit, who guides the erring soul toward freedom. The Christ leads downward and upward, creating spirit man in earth humanity in harmonious union. You want to know how to manifest this? The Lord's Prayer. So I will invite you to join me now and listening, or if you're muted, you can actually read along with me, the Lord's Prayer. And this is how we will end. And I want you to recognize that this Lord's Prayer is this exoteric and esoteric manifestation of everything that is being discussed today, and will assist us in everything we're striving to do. It will strengthen us, heal us, purify us, and activate us. It will provide that protection and the ground to perceive the realities that we're going to be discussing during the rest of our session today. So this becomes another way in which we align with the content and each other today. So please join me. Father, you who were, are, and will be in our inmost being, may your name be glorified and exalted in us. May your kingdom grow through our deeds and in the course of our inmost lives. May we perform your will as you, Father, have set it in our inmost being. The food of the Spirit, the bread of life, you offer us in abundance in all the changing conditions of our lives. Let our compassion for others compensate for the sins committed against ourselves. You do not allow the tempter to work in us beyond the capacity of our strength. For in your being, Father, no temptation can exist. For the tempter is merely appearance and deception, from which you, Father, deliver us through the light of your knowledge. May your kingdom, power, and glory work in us through all cycles of time. So be it. Amen.
Thank you. That was really, really powerful. I can't wait to live into that a little bit more. But I'm seeing the interlapping happening within myself, right in this very moment. So it's very potent. Thank you. How are we feeling, folks? Yeah, boy, that was a little bit of the antidote given to us right now, and we need it, because we're going to continue to deep dive. And yeah, I want to take us right back to the First World War. Not a pleasant scenario, but we know that at the outset of the Spanish flu epidemic, the word bacilli was being used at that time to describe this epidemic, because the word virus hadn't yet been spoken in modern science. So I'm going to ask Jeff to tell us what Steiner said at that time.
The forces present in bacilli are a consequence of the Ahrimanic hosts of heaven having been cast down upon earth, of the dragon having been conquered. But the consequence of that victory in heaven is that the Ahrimanic way of thinking has been spreading across the earth since the end of the 1870s. We can therefore say that on the physical level, diseases involving bacilli, as well as present-day intellectual materialism, have the same source. You jumped.
Sorry.
Have the same source, which now seeks to thrive in the realm of the human being. In a higher sense, disease and materialism are most certainly comparable.
So friends, when we look back at this First World War, which can be seen as a counterforce to the new Michaelic age that was just coming in, subnature was being harnessed for the first time. in the form of the cold, dead light of electricity. And so we can see a parallel with this escalation through all the wars that followed. Military technologies, from sonar and hydrogen bombs, up to now with the rollout of 5G and other bioweapons, which, haven't given us full disclosure. So perhaps we can see a connection with past epidemics and the rise in subnature. The coronavirus now, the hastening of the war of all against all, and the incarnation, the upcoming incarnation of Ahriman. There's a lot of connections here. It seems like a very serious invitation to look at the warlike conditions that are surrounding us today. So some of you may have heard this quote where Steiner says, "A lie is like a murder in the spiritual world."
Imagine a people which was composed entirely of liars. The astral plane would be populated solely by the corresponding demons which these lies create. And these demons would be able to express themselves in a constitutional tendency to epidemics. Thus, there is a certain species of bacilli who are the carriers of infectious diseases. These beings are the progeny of the lies told by human beings. They are nothing else than physically embodied demons generated by lies.
So it's a good thing we have the Lord's Prayer, because that radiates truth. But we have to recognize things as they are, friends. We do. When we're faced with these deep shattering truths, we can be grateful that anthroposophy exists. It is important to unite with other human beings to grapple with these ideas. Otherwise, it's completely overwhelming. So by virtue of the possibility of sharing spiritual knowledge and wisdom with one another, a great deal is done for our life here and now, but also in the spiritual world between death and a new birth. You can take it with you, folks. So Steiner, he calls it a holy mission laid upon humanity of the present, which informs the future, to work with the divine spiritual beings who guide the world and with the so-called dead. Because what we're doing here now is now, but we are working for the future. We have to keep that perspective. We have to really take up in earnest these kinds of spiritual conceptions, especially now, since more and more, common sense and clear thinking, driven out by profit motive and the parroting of a science built on materialism, which is employed consciously in the case of the dark brotherhoods, as well as unconsciously by people who, no fault of their own, are educated by a materialistic system. Steiner says the same thing about vaccines, which we're not going to get into today, but it's all related. So that was a lot to think about. So we're gonna take another little breather here with Mary Rude and do some eurythmy. And we're going to use this mantric saying by Steiner for it's given to us for the care of breathing and warmth and the overcoming of outer isolation through a spiritual connection with the world. So I'm going to stop the screen share. You can see this verse here, and we're going to be working with it in eurythmy with Mary right now.
Can you see me okay?
Can you pin her video, Ann?
Yeah, I don't see me.
Let's look for you.
I'm going to pin Mary. Just a second.
Okay. We're going to find you, Mary. You're out there. You're out there in the ethers. We're going to pull you in.
Okay, I think we have you spotlighted, Mary.
Can you see me? Because I cannot.
You have to turn on your video.
It's on. It's on. It's just a blank screen. If you can see me, that's okay. I don't mind having.
No,
a blank
I can't.
screen.
I can't see you.
I can't either.
I saw something flash in front of it. Maybe you need to adjust where the camera is.
Yeah.
Yes, perhaps.
There you
There we
go.
go.
That's
Now
it.
we see you.
Good,
It
good.
was backwards. There we go. Sorry. So this verse is about the sun. Yeah, I have to get this. And I'm going to do it and say it first, and then we'll go through it. All right? So it starts from the heart. So the verse is connecting our heart to the sun and the sun to our heart. All right, so I'm going to show it to you first. Start with the sun gesture. Into my heart streams the power of the sun. Into my soul works the warmth of the world. Then we feel our legs. I will to breathe the power of the sun. I will to feel the warmth of the world. The power of the sun fills, M to yourself, me, the warmth of the world, big M, permeates me. So when we look at it, I have a funny question here, but I'll have to deal with that. It's sunny. So verbs, right? The first verb we have is streams. So if you stand up and give this a try, E, reach, feel something streaming through your arms, right? Do the other arm too. Let it stream through. Right? That's our first verb, streaming, E. Works, K. We want something really strong for work. Feel your elbows, works. Yeah, do some work, works. Yeah. And then the I will, we want to fill with our legs. I will. Then comes the verb breathing. Breathe in and out. We can give ourselves time, right? Then comes the will again. I will. This time to feel. Small L, kind of inward. Feel. One more L. Feel. The power of the sun then fills me. Much bigger L, right? Little one for feels, big for fills. Fills me. And now M has a counter movement, but for permeates, I'm going to turn sideways. We want this M out of Aquarius, a huge M. From your head to your toes, permeates me. So let's give it a try. We have this P for power, power, and it is a power sound, right? So try that. Feel that P. Feel a great deal of power. Feel you have a great, great purple cape behind your back with great power. And now this gesture for the sun. Right hand is up, forward, clockwise. Left arm is down and backwards. Yeah. And this way, it's hard to see it on the screen. In this way, we feel above, below, right, left. The sun has altruism as it's moved. So here's the sun gesture. And when you do these gestures in rhythmic, you're really part of the quality of the sun. Sun, and now it comes into you, into my heart. All right, let's do that. Bring the sun into your heart. Into my heart. Now we have our first verb, streams. What? The power of the sun. So it isn't just sun, it's the power of the sun. Once more, once more. Into my heart. streams the power of the sun. And now much softer, we direct our soul with an O into my soul. Yeah, gather your soul into my soul. Strong verb, works, really strong, works. And now we get this M for warmth. See, this is counter movement. Feel warmth. Move warmth from your heart to your fingertips. Feel warmth all around you. Warmth. Now this warmth is very special. It comes from behind you. When we say world here, we mean the whole cosmos of the world. Yeah, big L. Whole world. Feel above and behind. Also below. Reach down below. Lift. Everything above, everything behind, everything right, everything left. The whole world, right? Once more. An L of the whole world. Right. So let's do that far. Standing, being ready, find your sun gesture. And then come into yourself, into my heart. Streams the power of the sun. Come back to yourself, into my soul. Works the warmth of the whole cosmos, the world. Down into your will. I will. Now it's small. Feel inwardly. I will to feel. Again. I will to feel the power of the sun. And the will again. Oh, that was breathe. I'm sorry. My mistake. I will. It's breathing. Breathe. Yeah. Breathing the sun into our heart. Breathe the power of the sun. Now comes the feel. I will to feel. This time it's warmth. The warmth of the whole entire universe, the world. The power of the sun fills me. The warmth of the world permeates me. So this warmth of the world, it's not just this beautiful sun like here today. It's the warmth behind the clouds. It's the warmth far into the cosmos. The warmth that comes from the highest hierarchies. That warmth. We want to get that warmth. That's the warmth we want to feel. So let's go through it. Once really slowly and then at a normal speed. Okay, start with our heart. Feel your heart connected to the sun. Very slowly we'll find our way. Into my heart streams the power of the sun. Into my soul works the warmth of the world. I will to breathe the power of the sun. I will to feel the warmth of the world. The power of the sun fills me. The warmth of the world permeates me. So even if you're not standing to do it with us, at least I think even just watching it, you get this feeling of how this These eurythmy gestures really express this relationship of the sun to our heart and warmth to the connection with the spiritual warmth. So in a regular tempo, either watching or doing it, let's give it a try. Feel your heart, feel the sun. Into my heart streams the power of the sun. Into my soul works the warmth of the world. I will to breathe the power of the sun. I will to feel the warmth of the world. The power of the sun fills me. The warmth, of the world permeates me. Yeah. We're going to close this now. Feeling earth and light, okay? The fold are the forces in me. One stream of forces goes downward, gives me weight, an inner root of being. One stream of forces goes upward. This fills me with light. If heavy forming forces weigh me down, I picture myself buoyant, being of light. So we're in two triangles and gather. Thank you.
Mary, that was beautiful. Wow, I feel energized. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
good, good. I know you were standing up doing it, Hazel. I know.
Yes, yes. Any chance I can get to do eurythmy with you, I'm always right there. Thank you. I
You're
hope
welcome.
everyone feels that way too. Good. So, yeah, we've been doing a lot of work. This is beautiful, and I'm hoping you're appreciating this in-breath and out-breath thing that we've sort of been doing so far, where we go down deep and then we rise up. It's really, you know, and we're going to meet here in the middle, find the Christ within ourselves, and do a little social sculpture by reaching out to each other. You know, we've been centering on the screen here, so let's have some conversation. And so I'd like to invite everybody to just come into groups of 3, and I put a little suggestion here, like, okay, what are you thinking? What are your impressions so far? Are there some things that jumped out at you from the presentation? Something we forgot, something that really resonates with you, something that you didn't know, something it was an affirmation of something you already knew. That's one part of it, if you want to. But of course, once you get into these karmic groups, it'll be what it'll be. But the other question I was a little curious about was, we're giving this sort of information of, okay, this is what's going on. We have to try to recognize what's going on in the world. And all of these factors, karma, working with the dead, the spiritual world, these demonic forces, etc. What are you doing as a human being? Are you taking some sort of a spiritual initiative? Are you creating some sort of a healing force in your life during this time? And maybe you want to share that. Maybe you're doing eurythmy every day. Maybe you're doing some sort of a meditation that's been really helpful. Maybe you want to share that with your neighbors. So we're going to have Anne lead us into the breakout groups. We're going to be in there for 15 minutes. And then when we come back out, Lelan will sort of facilitate a little comments. People can share their comments or something. So we'll get together in the bigger group and we can share what we learned in the little group. Anne?
Okay, I've got 14 breakout rooms created, and that's going to put 2 to 3 people per room. Let me see if I change the number of rooms. Okay, 13 breakout rooms puts 3 people per room. Here we go. As they say, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You might get a little message asking you to join the room. There you go. So please accept your invitation to join the room.
Hey, hey. Want to tell me your name? Hello. Whoa, 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 whoa. What?
Yeah, but I gotta do a little work here. I gotta move her to room 12. Hold on a minute.
Okay, let's.
Move to room 12. Okay. Let me look at my setting here and see. Hello and welcome. Everyone is in the breakout room, so they'll be returning to the main room in just a couple of minutes. So folks are finding their way back here to the main room. We'll give folks just a moment to arrive. And I think everyone is back now into the main room from the breakout rooms.
Hello, friends. Welcome. Hi, Nick.
Well, this is an opportunity now that we've had a chance to be together with each other for a little while. This is an opportunity now where we may be able to share with the large group things that are particularly touching our hearts or touching our thoughts, imaginations or inspirations, things that are touching our will and are sort of activating, something is activating within us. So we invite you now to share what you have.
I'll share. Our group really was wonderful. Two of us had met each other in a breakout room before, and that was a wonderful reunion. And it was Anne, she's here somewhere, and she comes all the way from Australia. So that is very gratifying. And the other was Robin. Robin's here on her iPad. And both Robin and I had, could speak that we were invited by Hazel this morning to join the group. So Robin was stepping in with maybe not too much background. But my background for this meeting today was in the night, from the night before. Because last night, before I went to sleep, first of all, I always participate in the Our Father or the Lord's Prayer that Lelan has introduced to us. I've been reciting that for the past 2 or 3 months. I can't remember. But I always recite it with my husband, who has crossed the threshold, and we say it together. And so after that, I wanted to read something before going to sleep. And out of the array of choices, I happened to pick Life Between Death and New Birth. And I happened to pick the very lecture to read that Hazel used as a reference this morning. So I was very familiar with what was brought forth today and deepened, but I was prepared for it.
Thank you, Catherine. And your mention of the Lord's Prayer brings to mind that I want to make an offer in the breakout group that I was in. Both participants asked if I would send them copies of that version of the Lord's Prayer that Rudolf Steiner brings, as well as the German original. And so if anybody else desires that, you may contact me. Hopefully you see my name spelled there, Lelan, L-E-L-A-N, at wisecosmos.org.
Could you put that in the chat?
I can.
Your email address, thank you.
I will. And now back to you. Who else? Thank you again, Catherine. Who else would like to share what is they're experiencing or contemplating, or perhaps a question that is arising?
Can you hear me, Leila?
Yes.
Oh, here I am finally. Hello.
Hello.
So it was very nice. Thank you very much. Of course, I know that Lord's Prayer or Steiner's, it's very beautiful, extremely beautiful. Yeah. And the impressions, what I said is that, well, it is new. You are all new to me, so I don't want to comment too much, except for one thing to say that I am very conscious of being African. I don't look African, but I am African. And many of these things that you people talked about and analyzed are things that we feel, we live with constantly, you know. That is our gift from our Mother Earth, the particular part. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there is something about each individual and each culture and each geographical region of the world and many other of these kinds of distinctives that enable us to engage and connect sometimes more naturally or sometimes more difficultly with elements of this. And so thank you for sharing how you find yourself in relationship to these things. It's a beautiful consciousness to have, and it's a gift to share it with others because it gives us something to mirror and to reflect on ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would contribute that in our group. We had the conversation of karma came up, of our future karma, how what we're doing right now affects our future karma. And so I think there was a few of us that I think us in the group, you know, really contemplating the importance of our lives in the big scheme of things. I've been studying the karmic relationships, and that's been a big eye-opener. And I think, you know, my study has just I've gotten even more study time, obviously, being at home and stuff. So the karmic relationships has really been changing my life a lot. And actually, I know Hazel has a karmic relationships group that I'm not part of. Maybe I should be.
Yeah, every Wednesday. And you know what? Because you are part of my karma, Robert. We're all part of each other's karma. That's the beautiful thing, right?
And by the way, Hazel, I misunderstood. I thought it was at the branch. I came all the way out here to the Chicago branch. I'm all by myself. So I'm holding it down here.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, we do meet there on Wednesday mornings, but yeah, we were actually going to be in person. But when we changed it from Friday to Saturday, we decided to just be at home. So thank you for embodying the space there. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Any other friends have something to say? How was your breakout group? What are you thinking about?
Rivers? Yes,
Yeah.
please, Rivers.
Thank you. We had a lovely little triad. One of us is in Mexico, one of us is in England, and one of us is in the Blue Ridge in North Carolina. And we shared the struggle of being separate because of the pandemic. The stress of the election, which is the results are being felt around the world. The election here in the States, and that one of the unifying things we had in common was taking refuge in nature. People taking walks in the countryside or in nature for recreation when they normally would turn to something else. I turned to the sunrise and the sunset, and one of us shared this gorgeous experience of seeing the aurora borealis, which is the meeting of the sun and the earth together. And that's an archetypal energy that I love to work with and to fill myself with the ribbons of aurora borealis. So the three of us really met on that, through that archetype this afternoon too. Thank you for the opportunity to join together. Really lovely.
Do we feel complete with this part? Anybody else have an ending thought before we go on?
I guess I would like to say that, I mentioned your blog and how we talked about really, you spoke so well of it in your blog. So I'll do just a little justice to it, but just that we focus on the love and the love of our planet and calling Christ and all that every day, to take some time to really focus on that and shifting our vibration with it's this level of love amongst us and the Christ within us, to really help us come to a new place and evolve and grow in a better way. So I just feel like that's so important to do. And the women in my group really loved it too and agreed with that. So it was just nice to feel that, there is that recognition and understanding for that and the will to do it. So I'm glad that's out there, and I hope everyone is doing well. Many blessings.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, that's gonna be my leading thought at the end, because I feel like we do have to end on that high note. But yeah, we've got some more deep dives to do.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody else before we go on? So yeah, the earth, right? Good old Mother Earth. She's a living being, just like we are. And every living being has to go through a death and a resurrection. Part of what we talked about in our breakout group was, why is everybody so afraid of death? It's the natural cycle of life, right? So people striving to employ spiritual science, we know that all things have their season. And of course, we don't want this transition, this death to happen before it's time. Of course not. Before humanity or before the earth is ready to take root in the spiritual world. Just like we don't want our friends, our family, anyone to die prematurely. But it's so interesting to think about karma and how complicated it is. And so we can't, it's really hard when we're in pain and we miss somebody that we love so much, but to really think about it from this bigger picture, that sometimes if somebody does die young, we think maybe there might have been some sort of a karmic agreement that they made, that they signed up for before they came into this life, to do that as a sacrifice for us. Because their unused etheric forces can then go into the etheric realm of the earth to fortify us. So yeah, when we're feeling our loss, it's important to go through that and experience that. But we can also see that death is a birth into the spiritual world, and realize that it's part of life. So yeah, but our culture today, really, it feels like there is a war on death, which gives way to this sort of unquenchable desire to live large at the expense of others, right? That 99% versus the 1%, it's a detriment to our life of soul. I call it fake happy, right? And perhaps fear of death is actually fear of life. How much life will we relinquish in order to acquire a sense of safety from death? But as we know, during this time of year, we're experiencing that the veils between the worlds are thin. And so, having put the iron will of Michael to work in our thinking, we must now have the courage to look beyond the veil of the material world into the spirit realm, the place of our beginning and our ending, only to begin again. Can we look at reincarnation and karma, Steiner's core mission? Can we look death in the face, knowing that we have work to do at this threshold? It's a threshold. So while we're here on earth, it's our task to build through spiritual ideas and concepts the wisdom that we need in order to have light on the other side. Otherwise, everything's dark. Steiner says, quote, "For what is acquired here as wisdom becomes light over there, spiritual light. Wisdom is spiritual light. In order that it may not be dark across the threshold, we need wisdom." So again, if people are not able to acquire spiritual concepts, they will have no light in the spiritual world. And without light, they cannot receive what needs illumination. Wisdom, which has been called by the name Sophia, is therefore necessary so that we may have light after death. We also need the capacity for love after death. Otherwise, we won't be able to develop a right relationship to the beings that are revealed through wisdom. So Steiner says, we need love, not the love dependent on the physical body. We can't take that over into the spiritual world, but we can bring all the loving perceptions we've had. So in other words, every time we marvel at a sunrise, right? Rivers, thank you for that beautiful image. Yeah, or we look at a tree, even if the leaves are falling off, or we take care of an animal, or unconditionally love another human being. When we consciously strive to revere the spirit in all life, we're not only making this life rich and beautiful, we are lighting the way across the threshold. adding rooms to our mansion in heaven, lighting lamps of love to warm the connection with our beloved dead. Now, in this quote, Steiner plays the devil's advocate by saying, be careful what you love. Geoffrey?
If we pass through the portal of death, having loved power or wealth, or debased our thinking by only following materialistic concepts or other sense-based things, then we must remain in the region of the earth as a destructive force. And then this love is applied to the work of destruction. These beings love the work of destruction, but the saving grace is that they are compelled to observe themselves in this false, misplaced love, which is really a lust, an enslavement.
So here also, Steiner discloses that in the future, a willingness to change must be followed up if, quote, the human race is not to experience continual hindrances. But the good news is that standing side by side with us are those who've passed through the portal of death. And with our angel, they act as keepers of what is gained by us on earth as spiritual wisdom. So this protection coming from the other side it's even stronger when we work together in groups. So yeah, let's take that a minute to just really let that imagination live in us. You know, as we consciously picture these helpful beings working with us, even now, as we bring forth these hard truths. Life proceeds in such a way that we create abilities from all of our experiences. And the things which we can't assimilate are woven into the fabric which we can then make use of between death and a new birth. It is in sickness and healing, and yes, even in death, that the complexities of human life become visible. Jeff?
If sickness and health did not exist, we would never be able to unfold the fruits of our own labor in the development of the world. For only by a knowledge of our mistakes can truth be arrived at. The human being learns to overcome mistakes and errors in healing on the one hand, and on the other, we meet the mistakes which we were not able to overcome in life in the existence between death and a new life, so that we learn to overcome them in the next life.
Sickness gives birth to a renewed striving. So next time you're laid up and you're feeling sick, remember that it's for a reason. Through sickness, we cultivate health on all levels. An epidemic illness can be seen as all evil can be seen as prompts. All obstacles that arise here on earth are directed from the spiritual world. They are directed from our higher self. But Steiner makes it clear that there is a difference between whether a person has such an experience, is able to understand why, or whether they experience them unconsciously without realizing why they have to serve such spirits. Jeff?
If the person knows why they are yoked to the spirits that bring epidemics about, they also realize that they must suffer from this sickness themselves in their next life in order to work towards a cosmic compensation. If the soul remains ignorant of the reason they create the same karma, the compensation can only occur in a later incarnation. progress is postponed, not only for the individual, but this has repercussions for the whole of humanity, slowing the progress of our highest evolution.
We're all connected, folks. We're all connected. So it's important that we learn about these things on Earth, because we're certainly going to experience them after death. Yes, we do. We need Michaelic courage to stay awake to the implications of these current events. Really, doesn't it feel good, though, to understand what it is so we don't just feel so overwhelmed all the time? If we can be open-minded, if we can stay positive, asking questions without judgment, opening to this as an opportunity, working consciously with our beloved dead and with the highest spiritual beings for true human evolution, which, by the way, certainly calls for us to renew the economic, political, and spiritual realms right now. The time is now. The time is at hand. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity to come into a greater integrity with what Steiner calls the threefold social organism. Okay, so keeping that in mind, we're gonna take another deep dive. Jeff, get out your beautiful voice. Here we go.
A being like Ahriman, who will incarnate in the West, prepares for this incarnation in advance. With a view to his incarnation on the earth, Ahriman guides certain forces in evolution in such a way that they may be of the greatest possible advantage to him. And evil would result were people to live on in a state of drowsy unawareness, unable to recognize certain phenomena in life as preparations for Ahriman's incarnation in the flesh. The right stand can be taken only by recognizing in one or another series of events the preparation that is being made by Ahriman for his earthly existence. And the time has now come for individual human beings to know what tendencies and events around them are machinations of Ahriman, helping him to prepare for his approaching incarnation.
Yeah, it's hard to stay awake, but we have to look around and see the truth. Friends, to make these adversarial forces work for our highest good, we have to recognize them, name them for what it is, expose it, see them for what they are through their works in the world, before we can bring those forces into the light, which is our job too. Can we do that within ourselves? So the opportunity for the human family on both sides of the threshold to show up for each other right now, it's huge. And the joy of both asking for as well as receiving support is available everywhere we turn. So I'm gonna stop us here and let Lelan give us a few words of inspiration at this point.
Well, thank you, Hazel. This is, and Jeff, this is another opportunity to, following on what was just shared, a question may arise for us as to what may we do to wake up, to become aware of the events in life around us, to distinguish between the good and the evil, between that which is Christ and Ahrimanic, for example. How do we wake up, become aware, become conscious? And also, how do we do that in a way, and then to engage these beings that we may, from a certain perspective, characterize as dark beings or evil beings? how may we engage them in a redemptive way. And there is a verse that Rudolf Steiner gave us in what is known as the main exercise. This verse is recognized by the first line, in purest outpoured light. And this is a verse that, along with the Lord's Prayer, Rudolf Steiner holds up as verses and prayers to work with on a daily basis that will assist us not only in our alignment with the progressive forces of the spiritual world, but will also help us to be able to recognize, to perceive those regressive forces and give us the opportunity to make those decisions and choices. Now, Rudolf Steiner also says that in working with these kinds of verses and prayers, it's important to not just do it in the, it's important to begin in the meditative way, but it is also important to engage these verses and prayers in other ways. And one of those ways is embodiment. And very often, and the verbal word. So very often when we do the meditative work, we tend to think of the starting place as silent and not moving. I would like to invite us now to engage this verse, in purest outpoured light, both verbally and embody it. Now, we've had some embodiment already with eurythmy with Mary today, and eurythmy is a very powerful language and form of embodiment. But what happens if we don't know eurythmy, or not very much? And Rudolf Steiner guides us that we can engage in embodiment in all sorts of different ways, and by just doing it, by opening to ourselves, to paying attention to the imaginations and inspirations and intuitions that come, and simply do it, make it up, experiment, harness your will, harness your feelings, harness your thinking, certainly, and do it. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to offer you to join me in following in an embodiment of this main daily verse that I just made up. And I'd like to show it with you and have you join me. If you're able to, I invite you to stand.
Lelan, do you want me to put that verse up there, or are you going to just speak it?
Yeah, actually, you're right. Let's do that first. If you would pop that up. So the verse is,
Sorry. There we go.
in purest outpoured light shimmers the Godhead of the world. In purest love toward all that lives outpours the Godhood of my soul. I rest within the Godhead of the world. There shall I find myself, within the Godhead of the world. And now if you go ahead and we can bring it back to me, and I invite you, if you don't have me on speaker view, go ahead and do that so that you can see me, and I'll give you an example of a way to embody this verse, just making it up. In purest outpoured light shimmers the Godhead of the world. In purest love toward all that is outpours the Godhood of my soul. I rest within the Godhead of the world. There shall I find myself, within the Godhead of the world. Let's do it 2 more times. In purest outpoured light shimmers the Godhead of the world. In purest love toward all that is outpours the Godhood of my soul. I rest within the Godhead of the world. There shall I find myself, within the Godhead of the world. In purest outpoured light shimmers the Godhead of the world. In purest love toward all that is outpours the Godhood of my soul. I rest within the Godhead of the world. There shall I find myself within the Godhead of the world. Now you go make things up. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes. Beautiful. We are co-creators, aren't we? We are called to co-create this reality that we call life, that we are sharing. So yeah, this is actually one of my go-to verses. I say it every day. And what I do is I fill myself up with the light and I burn off whatever shouldn't even be there. And then I can access this Godhood inside of myself, and I pour out that love, and it goes all the way out through the whole earth. It encircles the earth. And so the light and the love are encircling the earth. And then it goes beyond the earth to the moon, all the planets, all the way out to the Godhead. And that's where I rest. And then, of course, the next breath is in purest outpoured light. So then I'm actually part of that Godhead. I'm pouring out my light from the Godhead. It's just amazing. So I recommend people work with that, explore with it, as you mentioned. So it's really important to really hear about all of these connections, right? We're hearing about them, but as Lelan said, we have to put them into action. It's not enough unless we do something with it, make it our own somehow. So before we end, I want to invite you to join me and Linda and whoever else is willing in a social experiment. So we, as Anthroposophia, in service to humankind and to our Mother Earth, can initiate change through a positive thought form created by our will and visualization. So what would it be like to consciously rise in our thinking every day? And I'm suggesting 10:10 in the morning every day, to simply picture the earth surrounded by love and light. You could just picture it. Close your eyes or open your eyes, whatever it is. The earth surrounded by love and light. So this could be a collective intention that really becomes this key. It's a call, it's a key call to the spiritual powers on the inner planes to enlist their aid. These beings want to work with us. Our so-called dead, our beloved on the other side want to work with us. The highest spiritual beings live in our bodies. But unless we connect with them with our intention, they're just doing their thing. We have to call them in. We have to collectively build a cognitive imagination of healing. And when we do that, we create this protective helper. Right? We're not alone. We have these helpers. We can create them with our imaginations. We can picture the etheric Christ, Michael, the Sophia, or we can simply just have this circle of protection and light around ourselves and the earth. Really, it could be as simple or as complicated as you want. Imbuing basically our highest intentions with our soul forces of thinking, feeling, and willing, engaging them for the highest evolution of humanity. And then we become co-creators with the ever-present help of the spiritual world, that the earth may become a star. So let's try it. I invite you. Can we tune in every day 10 a.m. You know, we don't have to do it like it's, you know, the will exercise where you have to just do it on your own. You can put it in your phone and have a little notice ring at 10:10. Oh yeah, okay, now it's time. You know, so whatever time zone you're in, even if it's just for a minute, so that this imagination can move like a wave, you know, covering the whole earth. So some folks may want to use a seed verse like this one that Lelan moved with us. Or there's this beautiful one that one of our friends that's in the Karma Relationships lecture study group, we're talking about this and she gave us this verse from Herbert Hahn, which I think is also wonderful. You know, Herbert Hahn was a Waldorf teacher and one of the original members of the Esoteric Youth Circle. So we could say this verse, it's really very simple. When I think light, my soul shines. When my soul shines, the earth is a star. When the earth is a star, then I am a true human being. So what do you think, folks? You want to co-create this imagination of the earth as a body of light, a sacred star? And remember that the earth gets its light because it shines out of human hearts, like a sea of little suns radiating together with warmth and love to engender healing and transformation for all. So that's what I wanted to bring. And to put a little seal on that, I'm going to invite Mary Rude to come back, our dear therapeutic eurythmist. She also joins us on the Wednesday study, and we always open with eurythmy. So I think it was wonderful if she brought us the gestures for Hallelujah.
Yeah, I look funny. I can only see part of me. I don't know what's wrong with my screen.
We're going to pin you.
Okay, but it's still something's blocking the bottom of my screen. I don't know what. I only have half a screen. I don't know. I'm using things work out better than this.
Oh, that's
Let me
better.
put me back here. No, that doesn't work either. I don't know why. So let's do Hallelujah. And you all know how to do it.
Kind of noisy. Yeah, we all know the Hallelujah.
Right. So,
All right, here we go.
so we're going to do it for all those who passed. All right. And so when you give it away with the ah at the end, you can, if you picture it, you can let it go behind you, or you can give it out to the world in front of you. Let's start. Find again your heart. Ha-ha. 7 L's growing. Fourth one. Right and left side. Center. 3 big L's. Here come the vowels. Ground your feet. In. E. Ah. Give it away. Bring yourself up.
Beautiful. I hope you received it as well as our beloved ones on the other side. And so before we say goodbye, I just thought I would open the floor one more time to see if there were any more questions or comments or
Well, I would say that one thing I just picked up, and I mentioned this in the breakout group, is that in the third lecture of the third volume of Karmic Relationships at the very end, he talks about how during that time that he was doing the lecture, there was disembodied dead people who were having a greater effect than ever before in the world. And the more I think about that, and the more, our world goes the way it goes, and we think about the relationship of the dead to what's going on right now, it makes me think about just kind of like what's going on. These people, just like you were reading, materialistic people, their souls get into the realm of destruction with the earth, and their actions become destructive in the world. And so I suppose this is like a exponential trend given the effect of materialism.
But the good news is we have all of these tools to help them and to help ourselves and to help the planet. And that sometimes these things happen to teach certain lessons and to wake us up.
Yes.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I've been particularly enjoying all of the images you've been putting up, the paintings and all of that. Is there any way we could see those later to spend a little more time with them? Like, you post them anywhere? Or?
Yeah. I'll put a link up of the recording, and then I could easily if somebody shows me, I think I could post the PowerPoint so you could look at them that way too.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I'm very grateful that Robert brought up this whole thing about the departed, and they're not dead. We use the word dead. They're actually more alive than we are. And it just reminds me of a small playlet called The Mercury Capital, in which, when Steiner was actually carving the Mercury Capital and the war was taking place, there were explosions in the background, etc. And something in the play, a line that I seem to remember, he says, "Only when the spirits of the departed are able to participate in our gatherings will peace come to the earth." A very, very potent statement, very potent. And it also reminds me of the eurythmy performances that the London group used to do, and actually then the stage group that I was involved in, the Rose Theatre Company. We always, before the performance, gathered together and remembered the departed, those who were close to us and those beyond as well, so they would participate. They were invited to be in the performance, to inspire the performers and to participate. And this is something that we should not forget. We need to take this really seriously, it feels to me.
Very good. That's true. And not just, we're doing it because it's the season, but I think you're right. I think we really have to make this more of a practice in the world. In a lot of his lectures that he gave during the war, he would always begin, before he would do the lecture, he would do a verse that would honor those who have died on the battlefield.
I have a comment, Hazel, if I may.
Sure.
The Buddhists have a phrase, dedicating the merit generated by an act. And we've been talking about doing this as individuals, and we've come together today to create this communal ray of light. And it's been mentioned now at least 3 or 4 or more times about sharing this light with the departed. So many people have departed this year in chaos. And I just wanted to bring it up one more time, this idea of dedicating some of the light that we have generated today and coming together specifically as inspired grace to those on the other side who maybe didn't have the good fortune to have what we have right here. I don't mean that in an arrogant way, just to dedicate the merit of our coming together to their inspiration.
Beautiful. Thank you. There was a question here in the chat from Daryl, which I think is really important. I hope you don't mind, Daryl, if I share it with everybody. He's asking, is it possible to be tricked, to think that you're following the Christ consciousness? How do you recognize the machinations of Ahriman in the world? Anybody want to speak to that?
Ask Christ and he will tell you.
Say it again.
Ask Christ and he will tell you. If you just say, Christ tell me, and the answer will come. It's very simple.
I would add that, the notions of the Christ and what comes from the Christ is characterized by selfless love. So there's probably a good chance that Ahrimanic forces aren't behind your thoughts of selfless love, if that's what you're wondering about. But if it is selfish love, that could be telling.
Well, I have a technique that I use sometimes when people are very irritable or frustrated or angry on the bus or the metro. And I just say quietly to myself, I bless the Christ in you. And very often they stop and they start smiling. So it does work.
Nice.
So for me, I think the principle that I follow is, does whatever I'm doing lead to unity or to separation of some sort?
Yeah.
So the polarics of Ahriman Lucifer are both forms of separation. One is a separation from the spirit, and the other is a separation from earth and groundedness. And I think that's where the power of discrimination comes in, is to note when you're inspired by a being, is it really bringing me more into unity or less into unity or into balance?
A bit of a variation on what has been shared, but very consistent with what has been shared, is if one feels within themselves an impulse or an impetus or an urge or a need to fix someone or tell someone that they're wrong, or in some fashion argue with them, it is very unlikely that that is coming from the Christ.
True.
If our intentions are ones for the highest good for all, and like Robert said, we're not thinking about just what's good for us, that can be a good indication that we're on the right track. Any other thoughts before we end? We're a little over our time, so I want to be respectful of that. But Lelan and I would be happy to stay for a few minutes after, if people want to stay and chat a little longer.
I just want to note that there was a request that Utente probably put in the chat the words that she said she often uses. I didn't catch it either, so I would love it, and others would love it if we could have those words in the chat.
Marianne?
I said that sometimes on the metro or the bus or in the street, when I see people are agitated, not with me, but agitated or grumpy, I very quietly say to myself, thinking of them, I bless the Christ in you. And I just say it in myself, sending it to them. And they change. They start to relax, they start to smile, they change. It has not towards me, they themselves, they could be fighting with somebody or just grumpy or just tired. And if you say it, it goes through, it arrives, and there is a change. It's extraordinary. You don't have to look at them, you just have to think it, and it reaches them.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love it. Any
Yeah,
other thoughts?
I was just going to piggyback off what she was saying, that it's such a good point that when we're around people and we notice the nature of our thoughts change, we're really in the sphere of everybody's thinking, of everybody's thoughts. And when we submit and we put out positive, loving thoughts like that, put it onto the table and circulate it among us in the room or those we're standing by, that they pick up these thoughts.
Oh,
They don't know where they come from. They don't even understand anything about the nature of thoughts, but all they know is now they have this loving thought in their heart, and you put it out into their world. So that's great.
Charlene has her hand raised.
Yes, I think we can use what some people call our emotional guidance system. If we're feeling joy and hope and peace, kind of like we would call good feelings versus hatred, doubt, fear, I think that can be a guide too. And behind that would be what everybody said, such as that feeling of unity. And I was keeping a list, but what everybody said.
Yay, team. We got it going. Any other thoughts from our presentation, or any thoughts about what you're having for dinner? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Should we say goodbye?
I will say this last thing, that I was talking about the last paragraph from the third lecture of the third volume of Karmic Relationships. And while he was still talking about the impact of what is being done by the dead in the world here, he also said that we need to get rid of politics. And he just puts it right out there. We need to do away with politics as a whole. And so I think that's going to put me into a little bit of a study, seeing how is the threefold social order works in a politic-free world and what that would look like.
Yeah. I'm very glad you mentioned that, because that's precisely the thought that I've been having very strongly over these last week or so. We've got to get rid of politicians as jobs. It's not a job. We've got to get rid of politics, really. There's something really radically wrong with it all. How we do it, that's another question.
love,
Love, yeah.
just love.
Love and the threefold social order. And it's starting to take form in different ways, different parts of the world where that means that there's economics and of course rights, which is politics, work through. But if there's a middle ground where people can meet, a middle form of governance that is cultural, with the emphasis on cultural, that gives people a chance to meet on a level playing field where they meet brother to brother, brother to sister, and get to know each other. That's the kind of governance. I won't call it politics, but that's the kind of governance that we're searching for. And it can take form in, smaller units of government, or maybe, one day even larger, we hope for. And I'm just going to throw into that, Rosemary McMullen is on here somewhere, but she announced to us that at one of our meetings, that in Chile, a referendum has been accepted that they are going to redo their constitution. And that's where there is some hope towards this kind of governance, at least. And it's in the world, it's fermenting, it's happening. But the fact that we have a governance where there's only two choices, it's, one against black and white, one against the other. So we'll find it. We have to fumble our way through, but we'll get there.
I would love for us to have a meeting over that topic of what is politics and what is the alternative first thought that comes to my mind is conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I see in politics is a lack of true conversation. It's
True.
always something oppositional in it, like I have to play a game to win over you.
Right.
And what one would want to see is a legislative body that was a conversational body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the
Create a
culture.
chalice for insights.
I mean, the question was raised as to how you see the workings of Lucifer and Ahriman in the world. And
Yeah.
somebody said, well, when we're talking about this, love. And I think that is the bottom line of the whole thing. And that is, I think, is also what you're saying. When you actually meet and converse and really are interested in the other and what is living there, then you find ways of working with each other. If you don't do that,
Mm-hmm.
you do just the opposite. You polarize and you create opposition.
Yeah.
And that's what we see all the time. And I think that's the lesson we have to learn. We have to learn to love one another. Really.
Yeah, and there's forms for that. Like, wouldn't you rather see a round table than this rectangle that we do that we meet in?
Yes.
It's like there's one group on one side and one on the other instead of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
circle. And when you're in conversation, where you're listening to the other, what you're doing is you're creating a vessel for more insights to come than you would as an individual.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, to me, is what a legislative body is all about. It's getting as many points of view there, not 2 points of view.
Yeah. Right.
And to have enough points of view where we have more intelligence, and then we allow that intelligence to become will, instead of this trying to keep winning.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about that on our election night vigil, this idea of social artistry and the Goethean
Yeah.
conversation, and what Goethe said, which conversation is the art of arts.
Yeah. What's that great saying? What's more precious than gold? Light. What's more enlivening than light? Conversation. Yeah.
On that note, what if we thank our presenters and turn off our recording, and then those who wish to linger can linger here? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to thank our event organizer, Hazel Archer-Ginsberg, for her amazing contribution.
Yes, thank you.
This event and
Absolutely.
beginning this, and thank Lelan and Jeffrey and Mary for their inspirations and their artistry, and mostly thank everyone who has participated, because this event happened because of each and every one of the about 40 people on this Zoom.
That's great.
So with that, I'm going to turn off the recording, but not end the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne.
Anne.
Thank you for being
Thank
our
you.
host. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. Yes.